Today, hopefully everybody's doing well. Today's 5-minute book review is going to be on Plagues and People by William H. McNeill. Now, we'll get straight into it. This book I thought was excellent. It really reminded me of a college course that I took when I was earning my undergrad at SUNY Stony Brook called Disease and Medicine. And the professor was an acting MD, and she had a degree in history and practicing medicine. She was a respiratory doctor. Outstanding class. So the way the author here breaks the book down is he works it chronologically. So he starts in antiquity and then ends up in more contemporary things. So first and foremost, disease has always been interwoven with the human, species and even other species since really life began. So we're constantly, fighting back and forth. It's a fight of disease, and disease, on the other hand, is, trying to infect us, and whether it be a virus to replicate or a disease to just thrive. It's always a struggle, right? Sort of like Charles Darwin talked about the struggle for life. There's an equilibrium. Now, there's even some health scares today that I think are important to address. Like there was an Ebola outbreak a couple months ago, which I think has tapered off. And ironically, measles is on the rise, or at least appears to be. There's some outbreak in the United States because people are not getting their children vaccinated. Now, it's important to note that according to my pediatrician and a lot of people from the academic community, the person who sort of rose the idea that there is a correlation between autism and getting your child vaccinated, well, this person has, according to many scholars, been thoroughly refuted, and there's no direct correlation between the two. However, you're open to believe whatever you like. But getting a vaccination should be very, very important. All right, well, with that being said, the author's first thing that he really targets is something called Schistosomiasis, which is a parasitic worm, and it was big in antiquity. So when people would dig irrigation ditches, the irrigation ditches would oftentimes harbor like stale or stagnant water because they weren't necessarily using them for drinking, but more rather to scoop water out or bring it close enough so that they can water their crops, right? So in these irrigation ditches, it became a hotbed for disease, things like cholera and dysentery. But he denotes schistosomiasis as something that's that was very big in antiquity, and it's even around today. It has not been eradicated, and he estimates that even in the developing world today, that 100 million to 225 million people, in some way, shape, or form, have dealt with or are dealing with this disease. It's very easily mitigated. Like many other diseases, just common sense and remaining cleanly is very important. All right, so we'll talk about that more in a second. But what schistosomiasis does is it's a parasite. It gets into your body. It causes liver damage, death, blood in your urine, all sorts of nasty things that you don't want to really get involved with, and you want to make sure that you stay away from these sorts of things. Now, as probably many people predicted, this book had a major chunk of it on the Black Plague. Now, I'm sure many people's teachers went over the Black Plague thoroughly with you, so I'll just go over something that I thought was interesting. He hypothesized that the last the last Black Plague outbreak in Europe was 1665. So that's a fact. But now his hypothesis here is in 1666 there was a large, devastating fire in London, and he says that is one of the reasons, if not the reason, that it really started to get rid of this problem of the Black Plague. Now, how did that happen? He says after the fire, there were new construction methods used. So instead of the primitive timber and sort of hay style of construction, they used brick and stone and replaced the roofs with things like tiles, which was really less conducive for rats and fleas that were carrying this infection to be given a safe harbor and live somewhere. So it sort of expelled them and put them out. Very interesting theory. Makes sense to me. All right, then he goes on a little bit more. I think just the last point talks about smallpox and how Hernan Cortez and the conquistadors, to a large part, brought a lot of infection to Central America, and they were completely ravaged by it because their immune systems and their bodies are not necessarily built up a tolerance to it or antibodies, so it really ravaged their population. And he even talks about how Lord Jeffrey Amherst ordered blankets infected with smallpox to be distributed among enemy tribes. So this is really biological warfare, the beginnings, or mildly the beginnings. I know that in medieval Europe, instead of sometimes catapulting stones over a castle wall, they would catapult a diseased dead carcass of an animal. And, that's biological warfare. So, for as many ways as we can learn how to heal each other and cut off diseases at the pass, we're also trying to infect our enemies and do sorts of nasty things like that. So, once again, if you're interested in this book, pick it up. It's very interesting to me. All right, I'd probably give it like a 4 out of 5 star rating. All right, it's called Plagues and People. Once again, it's by William H. McNeill. All right, so read up. Thanks. See you later.